What is going on, my fellow Omi homies? It's Foster, and I'm back at it again with another VeVe and Ecomi video. Guys, before I jump into today's video, just a piece of personal news. Today is actually my 1-year VeVeversary, a term that probably doesn't exist anywhere, but I've coined it anyways. 1 year ago today, I opened up the VeVe app for the first time and didn't actually add gems for the first 10 days, but it's been 1 year since I downloaded the app, and I thought that that was pretty cool. Shout out to my wife. She actually got me a VeVe and Omi cake that I'll probably post a picture on Twitter at some point about. I thought that that was really cute, and thank you very much to her for all of the support and dealing with the utter nonsense that I spew all the time, and she has to hear about this project far too often, so thank you very much to her for supporting me throughout this journey. Guys, today I wanted to talk about something that I've seen circling in the community a little bit that I thought was interesting. At first, I'm going to be honest, I thought it was a bad thing, and I had some concerns about it. So I started to run the numbers on it and see what it all meant. As you can see by all of the numbers on the screen that I'm sure are very overwhelming, it is all going to make sense by the end of this video. Stick around and I'm going to explain why the fact that we don't actually have as many users as we thought we did is a negative thing in the short term, but is actually a very positive catalyst for the growth that we're likely to experience in the mid to long term. So I want to give a couple people a shout out in this video as well, because it wouldn't have been possible without them. Firstly, bravosassassin.eth on Twitter, as well as Puddincheeks for his spreadsheet that I use all the time for referencing in my videos. Make sure you guys go and check them out. This video would not have been possible if it wasn't for all of the back-end work that they do compiling all of the data off of IMX. So thank you to both of them for making this possible to be able to share with the community. So what I want to go over today is the amount of collectibles that are currently owned by people in the community versus the amount of active users that VeVe is stating that they currently have on the platform, why I believe that there's such a discrepancy, and what the data shows us coming from last year into this year with the amount of gem purchases and Omi burns that we have seen, and what we could possibly see based on those moving throughout 2022 and further into 2023 and beyond. So we'll start off by looking in the top left corner. What we can see here is the total gems purchased. And once again, I've referenced this in a previous video. This is from Puddincheeks' spreadsheet. So we can see that as of today, April 11th, there's been 323,446,331 gems purchased in the App Store. Now, what we can do is break down and see, well, what is this number? Why is it relevant to anything specifically? And how will it play out into the rest of the numbers that we're calculating? Well, if we look at his spreadsheet, we can see that in 2020, when the app was released, there was only like 50,000 gems purchased in the 2 months that the app was out. No one was using the app. No one understood why it was beneficial. Todd's and Rizzo's sat in the shop, not even sold out for several months. And it wasn't until about February or March of 2021 when we saw our first $1 million of gems purchased in the App Store. So we can see throughout 2021, we had $182.5 million worth of gems purchased in the VeVe application. Now we can look at 2022 and say, what has the growth been since we had a pretty decent 2021? What are we looking at for 2022? Well, from January until April now of 2022, we've already seen $140.8 million worth of gems purchased in the App Store. Now, if we break that down by quarter and take 2021 and divide it by the 4 quarters, because we're just leaving Q1 of 2022, we can see that that is a 309% increase in gem purchases on average from a quarter in 2021 to where we are now in 2022, which is pretty incredible to see. And I mean, we see it regularly on the spreadsheet. We can see recently we've seen a little bit of a slowdown, but overall, when we look at the spreadsheet, we can see the total amount of gems purchased has gone up quite extensively in this column here. We can see going back all the way to January, we were only at 182 million, and then we've gone all the way up to 323 million, and we're only through Q1 of 2022. So if we took a linear gem growth, which means that the amount of gems that were purchased in Q1 of this year were not exceeded upon in any other quarter, the same amount of gems were purchased each quarter, we would see approximately $563 million worth of gems purchased in the VeVe app. Now, that would break down to an average gem daily purchase of about $1.5 million. And we can go back here and look on the spreadsheet and see that based on the spreadsheet that we're seeing, there's some days where we're seeing about $1.5 million purchased, some days more, some days less. And the reason for that is obviously certain days when we have drops, more people are likely to add gems onto the app. And then other days when there's not as much going on, or the sentiment is maybe a little bit more negative, or there's other external factors going on in the markets. Not as many people are focusing on buying VeVe NFTs, and therefore the number does not go up as much. But that is the average that we should expect to see in 2022. What is interesting about this number is David Yu has come out publicly, the CEO of Ecomi, in an AMA and stated that they anticipate receiving $1 billion worth of revenue in 2022. But when we run the linear growth numbers, we see that we're only at about half of that. So where is this made up? Well, of course, we know that it's likely not to grow linear because as we onboard more users onto the platform, more people are likely to upload funds. Ergo, more money will be added onto the platform and likely spent on NFTs. So what I've done here, and this is probably a bull case scenario, I wouldn't say that this is likely to happen, but if we take the growth that we've seen this quarter and apply it to each subsequent quarter throughout 2022, this is a hypothetical that in a best case scenario, if all of the right marketing and all the right features are added to the application, it is something that is possible that we could see. So looking at this 309% increase, if we were to take that and apply it to each quarter for the rest of 2022, we've seen that we've already had a $140 million quarter in Q1 2022. If we were to take that Q2 total and apply that 309% growth, we would see 435 million gems purchased in Q2. And then in Q3, we would see 1.3 billion gems purchased. And then probably fairly unrealistic, but we can still hope, Q4 total purchase of $4.1 billion worth of gems, which of course would be absolutely incredible for Omi burn. It would be absolutely incredible for the morale of the project. The floors of a lot of the collectibles would just absolutely skyrocket. We'd likely see quite a few collectibles just disappear off of being listed entirely because they'd be getting held by people, and it would be really incredible to see. It's not impossible, and I'll go through the rest of the spreadsheet and I'll explain why. We're looking now here at the total Omi burn. Now it's worth noting, because I know not everyone necessarily understands the tokenomic model, any burns that are currently taking place right now are taking place out of the circulating supply. What I mean by that is any of these tokens that are being burnt by a wallet that will not directly impact the circulating supply of Omi tokens, the circulating supply being the tokens that you and I can purchase off of exchanges. But what it will eventually allow us to do is do buybacks. And shout out to Daniel Lee. I'm not going to get into buybacks today, but Daniel Lee recently did a video covering the most recent AMA with Reese and Alex. And Ecomi Reese, who is the communications manager for Ecomi, mentioned that buybacks are not actually off of the table. I'm not going to dedicate too much time in this video to it. Go check out Daniel Lee's video, but it is good to see, and that's why I'm going over this today, because I think that it is very bullish, especially if we do see those buybacks occurring. So we see that the total Omi burn from the non-circulating supply was 42.7 billion Omi. Once again, this is all coming from Majikh's spreadsheet. The Omi burn in 2021 was approximately 23.4 billion Omi from the reserve wallet. The Omi burn that we experienced between January and April of this year, this far into April, was 19.3 billion Omi. And once again, that was an average it was an increase of 330%. So similarly to how we saw a 309% increase in gem purchases, we're seeing a 330% increase in Omi burn. The reason that those numbers do not directly correlate to one another is that the amount of Omi burned is also relative to the price of Omi at the time that these drops are occurring. So those two numbers will never match up specifically, but it is important context to provide. So obviously the lower that the Omi token is in price, the more Omi we are burning relative to the amount of gems that are being spent in the store. So what we would see with a linear Omi burn in 2022 is approximately 77.2 billion Omi tokens, which is incredible. I did a video, I think late last year, maybe October, November, and I was predicting somewhere between 60 to 70 billion Omi tokens burnt in 2022. So this lines up with the predictive numbers based on the linear models that I ran at the time. This makes a lot of sense to me. And once again, while it does not come directly from the circulating supply, supply. This would put a lot of pressure on the reserve wallet. We do know that there are some catalysts and factors coming to OMI, such as third-party token integration that may further increase the burns that take place in the reserve. And all that this does is light a fire under Ecomi to make sure that they are implementing buybacks or other features to replenish that wallet. So we're seeing an average daily burn of 211 million tokens, which is obviously absolutely fantastic. Any day that Ecomi data tweets out and we see a big burn, it's really exciting to see. I think in the last 9 days, we've burnt approximately 4 billion tokens, which is absolutely incredible. It's really exciting to see that OMI really being burnt from the non-circulating supply, to see if we can start implementing those features to have it burnt from circulation. So similarly to how I ran the gem model and did an exponential purchase model for 2022, we've taken that similar model and we've implemented it into OMI burn. So once again, I'm not saying that this is the realistic scenario, and I don't want to sit here selling you guys a bag of goods. This very well may not happen if OMI price goes up at all, or if we don't have as many purchases or as many NFTs purchased as we think we might based on the gem model, then this will not by any realm of imagination happen. And once again, when we look at the numbers, you'll see that it's actually impossible for it to happen, but it's actually a good thing that it's impossible, because it shows that we really don't need that much to burn a considerable amount of OMI. And what I mean by that is the following. The Q1 total burn is 19.3 billion. We've already established that between January and April up here. So now we're taking that 330% burn and we're applying it to Q2. Well, now we see 63.7 billion OMI burn based on the current value of the token and based on the amount of gems that are purchased and used to buy NFTs in the store. We then see in a Q3 total burn 210 billion, 399 million OMI. Now, for those of you guys that have been in the project for a while, you'll start to understand where this becomes an issue and where the model likely becomes invalidated, because once we get to Q4, we see that 694 billion OMI gets burnt. Now, I know that many of you likely know, but for those of you that don't, there's only 750 billion OMI that were ever minted during the genesis process of the project. And of that 750 billion, no more than 314 billion will ever enter the circulating supply. And then within the reserve wallet, there was only ever 300 billion OMI. So we can see that even going from Q3 to Q4, we would run out of OMI in the reserve, and by that metric, we would actually run out of OMI in circulating supply if OMI was to stay at the same price and we were to burn this amount of OMI. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that we're going to go through the entire circulating and reserve wallet this year based on OMI burns, based on the numbers, but it does go to show that as we continue on this trend, if we continue to see more and more money spent in the application, if we see more and more NFTs come out, and if we see more utility for the token, these things are actually possible. And it gets really exciting when you start to run the numbers. And just for a little bit of context before we go any further, it took 90 days in the application, in the VeVe app, for us to hit $1 million worth of gems purchased. $1 million, obviously a pretty good threshold, I think. And then to go to $10 million, it took us 146 days. Then to go to $100 million, it took 333 days. So it took a quarter of a year to hit $1 million purchased of gems in the app. And then it took almost a year to get to 100 million, which is obviously a 100x of 1 million. So you can see that was pretty excessive growth within that time period. And then we look at how long it took us to go from 100 million to $200 million worth of gems purchased in the app. And it only took 65 days. Which is pretty incredible when you consider it. And the 200 million to where we are now actually took another 65 days. I didn't include it on the spreadsheet, but it's important context. I think recently we saw a pretty significant run up in January. And since then we've seen a cooling off period. I think a lot of people are taking their time with investing in the NFTs. There's not a crazy amount of hype going on right now. So it's a consolidation period. And I think it's understandable that we would see 65 days again to have $100 million added onto the app. But remember the excitement that everyone felt back in January with this 100 million being added on. It only took 65 days again for another 100 million to be added on. So when you realize that people are silently accumulating in the background and people are spending this money in the application and maybe just aren't talking about it as much openly, you realize that this is going to be a really great opportunity, in my opinion, moving forward. And the numbers, based on the concerns that I had short term, actually turned out to be bullish things long term, and here's why. We look at the total collectibles that are currently residing on the app. So shout out to Bravos Assassin. This was the other person that I said you guys should follow. He's been tracking the IMX data. For those of you that don't know, VeVe migrated over to Immutable X to be on Ethereum layer 2, and that is where all of the collectibles are minted right now. So all of the collectibles that are minted on VeVe are true NFTs, and they do get minted on the blockchain, and we all have access to this data, which is where this comes from. So we can actually see, and I've imported his spreadsheet to mine, but shout out to him once again, we can see the amount of accounts that actually have collectibles on them. It's 583,821. Now, of course, this is an estimate. This fluctuates. If you only have one collectible on your account and you sold it, it doesn't mean that you're not necessarily an active user, but you don't have that collectible on your account anymore. And we can only account for the information that we have available to us. And in this case, it's the amount of collectibles minted to a specific wallet. In this case, a wallet is owned by an account, which you and I both have if you use the VeVe app. So we can see the 583,000 number, which is, you know, a decent amount. We see that over 500,000 people own VeVe collectibles, which is pretty fantastic. And we can see that there are 329,000 accounts that only have one collectible on them. And that makes up 56% of the user base. So 1 out of every 2 people that has the app and owns a collectible only owns one collectible. And then we see that accounts with 2 collectibles or more make up 176,000 users, which is approximately 30% of the user base. So 3 out of 10 people own 2 or more collectibles that have collectibles on their app. Then we go to accounts with 10 collectibles or more. That's 59,000, which is approximately 10%, which is 1 in 10 people who own 10 collectibles or more. And then this is where the numbers really start to get interesting. And you see the dilution that's taking place in the app. And we're realizing how many casual collectors we actually have relative to the amount of people that are regularly collecting and taking the app seriously. And I do want to give a caveat to that. If you own less than 10 collectibles or 50 collectibles, I'm not saying that you're not a serious collector. It doesn't mean that you're better or worse than anyone else. But I think when we're looking at these numbers, it's important to understand that the app's been out for close to 18 months. I would say at this point, if you have 10 collectibles or less, you either just started or you've been around for a while and maybe the app wasn't for you, or they just haven't released things that you enjoy that you'll be collecting. But overall, I would say that if you own 50 or more collectibles, you probably have diversified somewhat. You've completed multiple sets. You've likely either started very early and were able to flip your way up, or you've spent a decent chunk of change on the app. And I would say that it becomes at that threshold that you're maybe more of a core or serious collector. And we can see that there's only 10,000 people, which is 1 out of every 100 people that collect. And then further, accounts with 100 or more collectibles is about a 1% again at 8,300 people. Now, the difference between 100 and 500 collectibles is obviously fairly significant, but it's still important to reference that over 500 collectibles is 481 people, which is less than 1/10 of 1%. So 1 out of every 1,000 people. And then when we get to the obviously a little bit more absurd numbers, if you're watching my video right now and you're one of these people, big ups and congratulations to you. If you have 1,000 collectibles or more, you're 109 people that are currently on the app. And if you have 2,000 or more collectibles, there's only 33 people, which is absolutely insane. Those are obviously the mega whales. Those are the people that saw the vision very early or have a pretty unlimited fund set that can buy as much of these collectibles as possible. Congratulations to you. You will likely be extremely successful long-term with the amount of collectibles that you have been able to acquire. We look at the average gems purchased based on this model. So we look at the 323 million gems that were purchased, and we can see that the average gems per user that has collectibles in their account is $554. Now, it's worth noting this number is skewed somewhat. You could have gems purchased on your account and not have purchased a collectible. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing against that. You could be holding your collectibles until such a time. So there's no way to actually know for sure how much an average user has spent. Obviously, the people that have spent money that have over 2,000 collectibles have probably spent in the millions, if not tens of millions of dollars on collectibles, whereas people that have one collectible could have been gifted collectibles when transfers were available, and therefore they did not spend any money. So all that we have available to us is the average, and the average gems purchase is $554, which I think is a very reasonable amount if you're just looking to dip your toes into the NFT space. I think we see a lot of the collectibles on OpenSea and other various NFT marketplaces that will sell for at least this, including gas costs. So it's a good baseline, I think, to establish. But once again, it could be skewed, and it's worth noting that. The total active monthly users is really the crux of my concern that I wanted to go over, but I wanted to kind of give a baseline to establish where we're at with the project currently before I went into it too much, because people are going to hear this number and there's obviously going to be cause for concern. And it's worth noting that I'm not thrilled about it either, but I think that I'm going to do my best to give VeVe the benefit of the doubt when it comes to this and explore reasons why this could be, but then we'll play devil's advocate and look at those as well. So VeVe has publicly come out and stated that they have approximately 2.6 active monthly users, and that statistic's outdated by at least a month. So I would imagine that if they were to publicly come out and state anything now, it would be higher than that number. Now, we can see that based on Bravos Assassin spreadsheet, there's actually only 583,000 users that have at least one collectible on their account. And of that, there's really only 176,000 that have at least 2 or more collectibles. So it's easy to see how we do not have nearly as many active users as we thought we did. But once again, VeVe, the way that they calculate it, whether you agree with it or not, is they calculate an active monthly user as someone who logs onto the app at least 3 times a month and engages on the app. Now, engaging on the app does not necessarily mean that you have to buy or sell a collectible. It could be participating in the feed. It could be looking in the market to see if there's something that you'd like to purchase and then ultimately deciding not to, or just looking to see what's going on in the application. Do they have cash out yet? Do they have these other features? And just kind of exploring the app further. But it's pretty easy to see now that the collecting user base only makes up 22% of the active monthly users that VeVe quotes publicly as saying that they have, which is both a negative and a positive. The negative aspect being, well, what makes up the rest of those accounts that do exist if they don't have collectibles, or even the accounts that have one collectible, which makes up over half of the people that have collectibles? Are these bot accounts? Are these people that downloaded the app and didn't like it and will never come back? Or they come back and they keep being disappointed? What is the rationale and reasoning behind this? So that's the concern surrounding it. And that's me being as transparent as I can. I don't have those answers, but this would be the concern if I was being as objective as possible. Are we seeing 75% of all accounts that have been created being bot accounts? I don't know that we'll ever 100% conclusively have that answer. What we do know now is that VeVe is obviously taking a strong stance on addressing bots, and I will do another video separately on that. But what it also means conversely is we're actually a lot earlier than I think a lot of us thought that we were. Because when we were hearing these numbers, 1 million, 2 million active monthly users, we were assuming that when those drops were selling out instantly, it was because all of these users were getting onboarded and then they were buying these collectibles, and that's why we couldn't get access to them. When in all likelihood, what more than likely happened was that bot accounts were getting a lot of these collectibles, and then they were selling them, and regular users, these people here, were buying them, and they were the ones that were hodling and collecting them. Now, to play devil's advocate, yes, it would have been nice for those collectibles to go to regular users. Of course, I would have liked to have gotten a lot of those drops as well. However, if we had a lot of these real users, and we can see the numbers here, the likelihood of anyone being able to accumulate any of these pieces would have been far less likely. And we can see that because we look at a hypothetical user distribution with 2 million users, and we can see that the number of 10 collectibles or more goes up to 202,000, which is roughly half of the amount of active users that we have right now that own collectibles. And we can see that 2 collectibles or more is 600,000, which is more than all of the collectibles with wallets that we see right now on the platform. So it's really interesting to see that. I think that, well, yes, it's likely a negative short term that we've experienced not organic growth, and that we've had this issue with possibly bots or other issues, people acting maliciously in order to accumulate collectibles. Who knows how many of these collectibles with 1 or 2 belong to bot accounts and whether or not they're getting banned or not getting banned. But the positive long term is this: we don't have nearly as many users as we thought we did. So when we get to that user base, when we get that marketing and advertising that VeVe is doing, when they're ready to do it, because we have those catalysts in place that the app can be successful, we're going to see a lot of growth, and we're going to see growth for the right reasons. And when you see that growth for the right reasons, you are going to see a lot of success with a lot of these collectibles, in my opinion. And a lot of this growth will come, and we've seen it already. The amount of money that's been added into the space by a relatively small amount of people, when you consider the fact that 75% of the user base doesn't even necessarily collect or exist with collectibles on their platform. So when we actually get to 2 million users that actually hold collectibles on their accounts, the prices of these collectibles, based on the lot run of a lot of them, 10,000 editions or less, even 50,000 editions or less, if you're one out of every 50 people that can hold a lot of these collectibles, especially with an established and valuable IP, think your Disneys, your Marvels, your Givenchy's, your DCs, so on and so forth, a lot of these collectibles are going to become very expensive very quickly. And that's kind of the focus that I want to put on this video, because I won't lie to you guys, short term, it kind of sucks. It sucks to see that we're advertised as having such a high amount of users on the platform when we realize that the amount of users that are actually collecting, and without even being able to establish if those users are collecting for positive or negative purposes, it sucks. But we can also see how early we genuinely are. And we can look at an example like Pokemon Go, which had 160 million downloads in its first 3 months. You realize very quickly that if we were to onboard major IPs, such as a Pokemon, such as major sports venues, such as other verticals, that we could see that explosive growth that a project like that saw. And if we have the utility and stuff in place beforehand, and then we market it effectively, anything is really possible on the app. But these are the growing pains that you're going through being here as early as you are. And while I'm not always happy with the timelines that VeVe and Ecomi come out with, I am always happy to see that they are doing their best to listen to the community and improve the application and platform as best as they can to make the app a successful place for everyone to be at. So these are the catalysts that I'm looking forward to in Q2. And these are the reasons that I believe that we may have some of that actual user growth, and that we'll be able to revisit this spreadsheet and see how these numbers have actually lined up and whether this growth actually takes place the way that we want it to. The first one being OMI to NFT. That, of course, means no barrier for crypto purchasing. That will obviously mean that people can use Ethereum, Bitcoin, and other major areas to onboard onto the platform and use those, especially when the collectibles become interoperable. We've seen it with HRO and other projects already. When projects are interoperable and people can pay with crypto, the amount of money people are willing to spend is much higher than when they're paying in fiat, which is obviously the only option we have right now. So that's very exciting, and that's one of the catalysts I'm looking forward to seeing, hopefully over the next few weeks, if not months. The second one being the money transmitter license. Now, of course, we've heard about the MTL for quite a while now, but the important catalyst for it is that it's a cash out for investor confidence. So yes, people are going to take their money off of the application. I've done a video on it. It was my most recent video. If you haven't watched it, I suggest go checking it out. A lot of people feel as though VeVe is just going to crumble when people go to cash out their funds. I've substantiated that that's just simply not the fact. If you'd like to go check it out for yourself, I run all the numbers there. I highly suggest it. But that will give investor confidence, because you know that you can put money in and be able to take your money out. And people knowing that they can take their money out both in fiat and in OMI to NFT, meaning crypto, is going to give people a lot more confidence in the project, and it'll give the project itself a lot more validity, and people will be able to see it as an actual investment opportunity rather than putting money in and then hoping that they'll be able to get their money out at some point. The final one being the web app. And people don't really realize how important the web app is, but some of the benefits are less fees and limits for gems. And the reason for that is right now, VeVe pays 30% to Apple and Android. And that's something that I covered in my most recent video for every gem deposit that takes place, which is part of the reason that the MTL fee is 10% to cash out. Once the web app comes out, you'll be able to buy gems for free on the web platform, and VeVe will not have to pay that 30%, meaning that they can pass those incentives along to their users. It also means that there won't be a $600 gem limit imposed like there is on the app stores. You will be able to deposit as many gems as you have access to on your credit card or within your banking institution. Therefore, a lot of these collectibles that have slightly higher floors that people may want to be purchasing right now but cannot be bothered to upload 600 gems at a time will be able to do so. And I think that all of these catalysts, which Ecomi and VeVe have publicly spoken about being priorities for them in Q2 of this year, will be huge for the project, and I'm very excited to see all of them. Guys, if you stuck with me this long, thank you so much. This was definitely a longer video than I would have liked to have made, but it's a lot of important information that I wanted to get out here, and I wanted it to be able to be used as a reference for anyone that has any concerns or wants to understand where some of these numbers come from and what some of the resources are in the community that you can use should you ever have questions or are looking for further information about anything that's going on in the project. I see a lot of times on social media, people will come out with their opinion and they have no facts or anything to substantiate it. Absolutely nothing wrong with making an opinion on something, but if you have the information available to you, it's such an important thing to go out and seek it for yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. You don't have to take anyone else's word for it. Go out, do the research for yourself, and let me know what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section down below. Do you think that this gem growth in the OMI burn is plausible? Do you think that it's completely out to lunch? What are your guys' predictions? How many gems will we see purchased by the end of this year? How much OMI will we have burned? Let me know. I want to hear from each and every one of you. And once again, thank you for all the support over the last 12 months. I created a Twitter account just to join the community, and I started doing YouTube just to be a part of the community as well. So thank you so much for all the support that you guys have given me. If you enjoy my content, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe so that you do not miss any more content that I will be putting out. I love you all. Peace.